650 ICE agents. Florida has. Hey, please let you finish. Please let me finish.
And do you really believe that that's the reason that many ICE agents are, or federal agents are in Minneapolis?
Of the local Minnesota police from honoring immigration.
Hold on. Let's just address it. Tim Walz is the governor of the state. He's not responsible for the county jail. The sheriff.
He's responsible for not lying in an op-ed in the Wall Street
Hold on a second.
Journal.
The sheriff of Hennepin County, which is just one county, there are many counties in Minneapolis. Some of them do coordinate with ICE.
Oh, it doesn't matter how many ICE agents are there. It matters how many deportations are there. The vast majority of the deportations have been from Texas because it has the most number of illegals in it. So 650 ICE agents were able to deport hundreds of thousands of illegals from Texas.
Why is the proportion
because it
inverse?
is a red state.
Just explain to me why it's the inverse.
I'm literally explaining to you why it's the inverse, because they're able to be effective because the local law enforcement is helping them and allowing them to work together.
Just imagine it's January 6th, and 9 Capitol Police have a guy on his stomach, and they shoot him 10 times, one of the rioters. Your party would be
I don't have a party. I'm not a Republican.
Okay, well, the Conservative Party would be, and I'm not a Democrat or a Republican, but the point is, I'm living in an upside down world.
Good Lord, this is exactly why live fact-checking matters. Because the moment someone strolls onto telly with a scary number and a smug tone, 3,000 ICE agents, half the internet is already halfway to a meltdown. And then Abby Phillip does the simplest, most devastating thing imaginable. She asks basic questions, calmly, repeatedly, and the whole performance starts wobbling. No theatrics, no shouting, just reality, applied like a scalpel. That's what we're reacting to today. Misinformation dressed up as certainty, and how one competent host punctures it. If you love explosive content like this and want to see more, click that subscribe button.
Tim Walz is calling out the Trump administration and accusing it of lying as it shapes its narrative about how Minnesota enforces immigration policies. In a new op-ed for the Wall Street Journal, Walz rebukes the Trump administration's claim that the state jails and prisons are releasing the worst of the worst. He writes that in reality, the Minnesota Department of Corrections honors all federal and local detainers by notifying ICE when a person is in custody, and is not a U.S. citizen. Now, Walz adds that there is not a single case of the department releasing someone from state prison without offering to ensure a smooth transfer of custody. He then slams ICE's tactics, saying that what the agency is doing is not effective law enforcement, it's chaos, illegal, and it's un-American. Now, this is, Arthur, the central claim about why ICE is in Minneapolis in the first place. There are lots of so-called sanctuary jurisdictions, but the state of Minnesota is not one of them. And that's the point that Tim Walz is making, that the state prisons where they house the worst of the worst who are serving out sentences for committing crimes, they hand over prisoners to ICE.
And hypothetically, that's why we haven't seen any of this in New York. Hypothetically, that's what I've been told is that's what the deal that was cut in the last mayoralty is that, okay, we're going to let you go look at Rikers Island, which is the only prison in the 5 boroughs. We're going to let you go into the courthouses, but we're not going to let you pull people out of Target. And they cut that deal here in the city, and that's why we didn't see any of that stuff. And the difference is, whether you're in Rikers Island or you're a courthouse, there's paper documentation of somebody's status. Just so you know, in the courtroom now, Abby, the immigration comes out of the judges about 5 times during a regular court proceeding. Are you a U.S. citizen? Do you understand there are ramifications if you're not a U.S. citizen? I'm like, Judge, his grandparents were born here. Yes, but they are very focused on that. But if you're not, there are people waiting out there to grab you. There is no doubt this is political. There's no doubt that President Trump and Walz and it's Minneapolis and Minnesota for a reason. But I will tell you this, and we just analyzed that video. These ICE agents are not trained for this. The NYPD handled all the George Floyd riots, which were horrific. They handled the Columbia takeover. I was here with Anderson Cooper. They quelled all of it without harming anyone. Not one person got hurt. They're trained to de-escalate. The ICE agents are like trained for war. So they're going in and they're just using the most severe tactics.
To follow up on that, it is political, it's retribution, and that's why this is happening. Everyone is for getting illegal immigrants out of this country, the bad guys. This has gone beyond that. Let's all recognize that. The viewer at home, respect that they're intelligent enough to understand that.
Correct.
Texas has 2 million plus illegals, 650 ICE agents. Florida
Do you know how
has.
many people were
Please let
deported
I
from
let you finish.
Texas?
Please let me finish. Minnesota, Florida has 1.1 million illegals, 350 ICE agents. Minnesota has 130,000 illegals, 3,000 ICE agents.
Man. Okay, before we even get into the legal weeds, can we talk about that headline grabbing number? 3,000 ICE agents in Minnesota, 3,000. And we're meant to just nod along like, yep, totally normal, nothing to see here. Are you kidding me? And look, actually, scratch that. Because the point isn't even immigration enforcement exists. Of course it does. The point is how people weaponize numbers to manufacture panic. They throw out a massive figure, they slap the word retribution on it, and suddenly it's all vibes, no verification. Abby's response is so simple, it's almost insulting. Do you really believe 3,000 agents are necessary for a state with, what, a little over 100,000 undocumented people? And you can literally hear the argument wobble. Because once you ask why that many, why there, why now, the fear-mongering has to either produce evidence or collapse into deflection.
And they're about to send them to Maine because apparently drug dealers come over from Mexico and they go, all right, listen, we could go to Florida where it's really warm and it's sunny. And they're like, no, let's go to Maine where it's 50 below. They don't pronounce their R's and everybody gorges on lobster.
You're right.
Just respect the American public. If you're a conservative right now, you have to look at this and go, this is beyond the pale on any level. And so to say that this is anything but retribution and politics, he's targeting Democratic cities. He loves to be the tough guy. He threatened to have people that heckle him during his speeches. Remember, he would say, take him out and beat the crap out of him. Mm-hmm. That's what we're dealing with.
Batya.
Oh, it doesn't matter how many ICE agents are there. It matters how many deportations are there. The vast majority of the deportations have been from Texas because it has the most number of illegals in it. So 650 ICE agents were able to deport hundreds of thousands of illegals from Texas.
Why is the proportion
because it
inverse?
is a red state.
Just explain to me why it's the inverse.
I'm literally explaining to you why it's the inverse, because they're able to be effective because the local law enforcement is helping them and allowing them to work together. There were so many lies in Tim Walz's op-ed. I just want to go through
Let me just
them.
ask you about that. Do you really believe that 3,000 ICE agents are necessary to deport maybe a maximum population of a little over 100,000 undocumented immigrants?
Right, and here's where it gets properly revealing, because when the numbers start falling apart, they reach for the oldest trick in the book. Mash different systems together and pray nobody notices. State prisons, county jails, local sheriffs, the governor. Just chuck it all in a blender and call it Minnesota blocking ICE. And Abby, credit where it's due, doesn't take the bait. She stops it dead with one simple clarification. The governor doesn't run the county jail. That's not an opinion. That's how the bloody structure works. And suddenly the whole Tim Walz personally released the worst of the worst vibe, scratch that fantasy, starts to disintegrate. Because the guest is talking about jails like they're prisons, and holds like they're warrants and cooperation like it's legally risk-free. It isn't. Counties get sued for over-detaining people. They pay settlements. So no, it's not soft on crime. It's we're not committing unlawful detention on your vibes. What do you lot make of that?
American city, you really believe that that's
given the
true?
massive amount
and
of
do you really believe that that's the reason that many ICE agents are, or
total
federal agents are in Minneapolis?
Of the local law enforcement to assist them, I don't think that ratio is so crazy.
But do you think that's really why they're there in the first place?
I have no idea. I mean, they
because let me play what Jacob Fry, the mayor says he thinks happened with why they decided to surge immigration officials in his city. Listen.
But I think that the initial impetus to come to Minnesota was go to Minnesota, arrest and deport a bunch of Somali people. And then they get here and they realize that the Somali people that would be arrested or deported are all illegal. They're American citizens. You can't do that.
That's correct.
So this was supposed to be about fraud, but now it's about immigration. But the Somalis are Americans, so you can't do them. So we're going to do everybody else.
So is the idea that therefore the 100,000 should be able to stay, even though the American people voted to get rid of them?
Why the show of force in this particular city right now? And according to Trump and DHS officials, it's actually because of the fraud. But is it because they thought that the people committing the fraud were foreigners when they're really Americans?
Possibly, but then what is wrong with then deporting the 100,000 illegals
why are we sending ICE agents to investigate fraud?
I just want to go through a few of the falsehoods that Tim Walz told in that op-ed. For example, he says ICE has access to state prisons, and therefore they're not depriving them of any access to any criminals. But what he left out was the fact that ICE is prohibited from accessing the county jails where pretrial detention happens, which is where the vast majority of the illegal criminals are being held.
Let's just address that for just a
his
second.
His own AG issued a legal opinion banning Minnesota police from honoring immigration detention.
Let's just address it. Tim Walz is the governor of the state. He's not responsible for the county jail. The sheriff.
But he's responsible for not lying in an op-ed in the Wall Street
Hold on a second.
Journal.
The sheriff of Hennepin County, which is just one county, there are many counties in Minneapolis. Some of them do coordinate with ICE. Just one county that you're referring to doesn't allow that coordination to happen. Here's one of the reasons why that might be the case. Because there have been several counties in Minnesota that have been sued by people who have been detained for longer than they were legally allowed to be detained. And the county then had to pay out settlements to those people as a result of those suits. So it's legally fraught. It's a legal. Hold on. It's a legally fraught issue. It's, first of all, you're talking about jails. You're talking about prisons.
And that right there is an example of why it's dangerous that this lady hosts a show on News Nation. Because this is what she expected to do there. She expected to try and insinuate something, but she didn't expect to be pushed back on because Abby Phillip actually knew what she was talking about. This is what MAGA do. This is what Donald Trump is used to. That's the reason as to why typically when you see any MAGA, talking head, they hate coming on UK television because when they do, when you have someone like a Victoria Derbyshire, who is a very, very good journalist, a very good interviewer, in my personal opinion, they push back on the lies, on the narratives, and they're so not used to it. That's the reason why Carla Sands gets wiped the floor with time and time over and over again.
And here's where it gets even more telling. Because once that whole Minnesota is blocking ICE storyline collapses, the argument starts doing that weird shapeshift thing. Actually, scratch that. It doesn't start doing it. It's been doing it the whole time. First, it's violent criminals. Then it's fraud. Then it's Somalis. Until, oops, they're Americans, so that one dies on impact. And then suddenly it's just, well, deport the 100,000 anyway. Right, so which is it? What's the actual stable reason for a surge right now? Because if you can't answer the why Minnesota, why now, why this scale question without jumping lanes every 10 seconds, it doesn't sound like policy. It sounds like panic or politics. And Abby just keeps calmly pulling that thread, and the whole jumper starts unraveling.
It's a legally fraught issue whether somebody has been accused of a crime, maybe they've been charged, they've been jailed, and then they've been ordered released. Then you keep them. Some places do that, but there's a risk there.
But I mean, law license on the line.
There's a risk there. Yeah. So I mean, I'm just laying it out for people because I want people to understand this is not. It's not as simple as the politicians want to make it seem. And so I think that's important.
But you said something. You were onto something just a minute ago by asking her the why, and you led to it. There's another reason why they are there, and we're just not talking about it. The other beat of this question is, what about this ransom note that AG Bondi sent? She said, okay, you want us gone? Here are the things that we need.
Why do you want the voter rolls? What does that have to do with it?
What do you want the voter rolls and the Social Security? You want privileged, priceless information of individuals there because he understands what goes on. This isn't about, I don't want to talk about whether or not Governor Walz is lying in an op-ed. I want us to stay on track. Why are they even there in the first place? And what are they really doing? Because they're not deporting.
Get illegal migrants out of the country, like the president promised he would do, and the majority of Americans voted for it.
And that's the bit that fries me, because none of this requires a grand conspiracy corkboard, does it? It just requires one adult in the room asking, right, so what exactly are you saying? Actually, scratch that. It requires the host to not let the guests slither off into vibes and outrage as a substitute for evidence. Because Abby's doing something devastatingly simple here. She keeps the question small, clean, verifiable. Who has authority over what? What's the policy? What's the number? And when you do that, when you insist on definitions instead of drama, the whole talking point routine collapses. The guest wants a fog machine. Sanctuary, blocked. They won't cooperate. And Abby's like, okay, which agency, which facility, which county? Show me. And you can hear it, the frantic pivoting. That's what basic scrutiny does. It turns confidence into confusion. Every time.
Simple.
To the beginning of this, Trump says he's going to deport violent criminals.
No.
Well, he says he's going to be, the impetus of his immigration. He said violent criminals. He comes down the escalator. He calls Mexicans rapists, and he says that he's going to deport violent criminals. And there's been a 222% increase in the detention and arrest of ever committed a crime. These are the folks that take care of our kids, the elderly. These are the farm workers that work our farms. And the American people are upset about that. And not only that, but this is no longer about a green card holder or a TPS recipient or a DACA recipient. This is now about the American people. The 2 people that got shot and killed are American citizens. American citizens, 170 of them have been detained. 20 of them have remained incommunicado for a significant period of time. Kids
and that
are U.S. born
are
being deported.
Necessarily.
So the American people are upset.
It also doesn't necessarily, even that number, I don't think even captures the scope of it, because there have been many Americans who have been detained for shorter periods of time for whatever reason, and maybe aren't counted in the arrest records, and then they were released when it was found out that they were citizens. But one other thing I just also want to note, the New York Times has a very important story tonight, also saying 100 refugees with no criminal records from about a dozen countries were arrested in Minneapolis by immigration agents in recent weeks. They were then flown to Texas for interviews and then left in one case, left when it was determined that there was no reason to hold her, left without anything, any ability to get back home.
I think it's...
So they're rounding up a lot of people. Some of them are illegal immigrants. Some of them are perfectly legal, have done absolutely nothing wrong, and stranding them somewhere in Texas.
Not only are they rounding up people, they're profiling as well.
And here's the thing. I told myself I wouldn't get dragged into the emotional detour, but you can literally see it coming, can't you? The moment Abby's questions start landing, bang, out comes the January 6th hypothetical. Classic. It's like a panic button for people who've run out of facts. Because notice what just happened. We were talking about ICE numbers, jurisdiction, detainers, who controls county jails, and suddenly we're in some imaginary scene of Capitol Police doing an execution-style shooting. Mate, what are we even doing? And let me stop right there. This isn't about whether force is ever justified. It's about distraction. When the argument on immigration enforcement falls apart, they reach for a culture war flashbang to reset the room. And it's so telling, isn't it? Instead of answering why Minnesota, why now, we're litigating a fantasy to dodge accountability. Pathetic.
I think if you and I were to walk outside, it's more prevalent that I will get stopped.
I just have to say, let me just also note.
And you would.
Let me just also note that Citizenship and Immigration Services says in a statement that they are verifying the merits of all refugee applications and ensuring no issues were overlooked. And they're doing so, apparently, people flying them to another state and then determining it at that point.
To your point, immigration's been a problem. And people think that the bad guys everybody, left and right, the bad guys have to go. The execution of what's happening now in Minneapolis is gone too far, and I don't understand where the disconnect, where as a conservative...
No one should be disagreeing with that.
But you can't get that. Let me put it to you this way. Just imagine it's January 6th, and 8-9 Capitol Police have a guy on his stomach, and they shoot him 10 times, one of the rioters. Your party would be
I don't have a party. I'm not a Republican.
Okay, well, the Conservative Party would be, and I'm not a Democrat or a Republican, but the point is, I'm living in an upside down world. I'm living in an upside down world. I'm being...
And there it is, the entire game. You press them on a basic, grown-up question. Why Minnesota? Why now? And suddenly we're in some weird hypotheticals and vibes courtroom where confidence is treated like evidence. Good Lord, let me stop right there, because this is bigger than one guest getting flustered. This is the right-wing media ecosystem in miniature. Say a massive number, imply a conspiracy, blur jails with prisons, blur governors with sheriffs, and when the wheels come off, pivot to an emotional detour and hope the audience forgets the original claim. And credit where it's due, Abby Phillip didn't do theatrics. She did the one thing that terrifies talking point merchants. She stayed on the facts. Calm, precise, relentless. So I'm asking you, why do so many people get paid to be loudly wrong on telly? And why is basic scrutiny treated like an attack? Drop your take below.
By a Republican administration, you can carry a gun legally, but you can't bring it to a riot. But you can bring it to a protest. But when there's a riot that benefits, the January 6th benefits Republicans, you can bring any weapon you want.
Well, that is the perfect segue to what we are about to talk about next.